Welcome, YouTube, to the Talk Show for Talkers. Hi there, everyone. We're having our pre-recording chat, as we always do when we come on to Zoom. And, of course, now everyone's gone quiet. And, of course, we're not actually showing anything. Why are we not showing anything? Because... Oh, that's better. Oh, it says Audacity. That's not Audacity. That's Zoom.
Yes.
Well,
I'm going to mute myself until you finish talking, Moira, so that you're not distracted by any background sounds.
There's no background sounds, I'm glad to say.
Cork.
There's no background sounds. All is well. All is quiet on the Western Front and Eastern Front. And apologies to anybody, well, there's nobody online now anyway, but in case you are viewing this later, I'm having to just do a little bit of editing of how things look. That's much better. So that's our advertising slogan, and that should be.
Listeners, I'd like to introduce to you our sound engineer and technical director of technical matters, Moira O'Brien. She has a trait, which you'll all recognize, of talking to herself out loud while she's doing things. And sometimes the other co-presenters on the show, Ted Melanphy, who you can see here, very experienced person, in my mind, extraordinarily distinguished, and in some respects, a mentor to me, even though he hasn't got any official standing and recognition by Toastmasters International. So that's Ted Melanphy. He lives out the country somewhere. And the last I heard is that he may indeed be a fly fisherman and may keep chickens. He'll do an icebreaker later. I'm Paul O'Mahony. I'm talking to you from Glanmire in Cork on the eastern side of the city. And I'm filling up this time until Moira O'Brien has done all the technical stuff so that you will not be bored out of your head by somebody having difficulty turning on this and turning on that. But I'd now like to hand over to Ted Melanphy and ask him a small question while we're warming up. Ted, what is your middle name, please?
I haven't got a middle name, Paul. I wasn't going to be around long enough to be christened with two names, so I'm just christened Edward Melanphy.
Now, what do you mean by that dramatic phrase, I wasn't going to be around long enough?
Well, when I was born, I was a twin. I was christened as soon as I was born. You're muted, Paul.
Well, I'd have muted myself because I've never heard the story before, and I would be what's called speechless. Ted, that's I feel honored that you've told me. I'm serious now. I feel quite honored.
I know.
You told me that.
It isn't everybody I would have told, you know. It isn't everybody would have asked me the question. The interesting thing actually is that my dad is a twin as well, or at least he was a twin. So I was a twin of a twin.
That's unusual in that usually twins skip a generation.
Yeah, that's what they say anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, my grandmother had 14 live births. My grandmother had 14 live births and then gave birth to twins. How about that?
My goodness. If, on the other hand, she'd had all 14 births at the same time, can I ask, I know what triplets are, I know what quins are, but what would be a 14er at the same time? That would be a question for a Toastmasters grammarian at some
That would be quite something.
That would be a miracle. You'd have to call that a litter.
What a terrible insult to call Moira the runt of the litter.
I didn't say that.
I said my grandmother, not my mother, for God's sake.
Well, okay, but she's descended. The last born of the litter is called the runt of the litter,
This is absolutely true.
And since your grandmother was runt of the litter, I'm not sure what that makes you, Moira, but I don't.
No,
Okay,
my
next
grandmother
up now
wasn't the
to
runt
us.
of the litter. My mother was actually the second of the 14 live births, or 15 live births.
Paul is getting mixed up
You're getting
between
very
daughter and
Confucius,
granddaughter.
yeah.
Yeah. Some of the most interesting pieces of conversations begin in misunderstanding.
Yeah. I'm just trying to
Two
find
older
my
wars began
own.
exactly in the same way, Paul.
Are we
How long,
public?
Ted, do you think you and I will have to chat before our
Okay.
sound engineer will be ready to
I
start?
think she's ready now. She
Well,
looks.
she's getting ready. She's just
Don't let appearances deceive you, Ted.
we have a live
By the way-
stream, but we have terrible audio delay problems.
Okay, well,
So
leaving
just
you
bear
to
with
sort
me.
that out. Can I say, Ted, you look very fetching today,
Thank you.
but unfortunately, there's a little clash between the red in your, we'll call it your Gansey, and the red in the painting behind your back. I think if you could recolor the painting, I know one of your own, but if you could actually wear it so that it matches the Gansey.
It's not a Genzi, it's a short.
Okay, so here we have Ted. Your knowledge of Irish language. What's the difference between a Gansey and a shirt?
The Genzi is a jumper.
Okay, what's the difference between a jumper and a shirt?
A jumper is.
Oh, can you use a jumper to restart your car after the battery
Yeah,
is?
this is a Gansey
down?
of sorts.
Oh, you can, Paul, definitely.
Very good.
Just make sure you get your negatives and your positives right.
Oh, very good. Ted, do you ever wear cardigans?
I never wore a cardigan, Paul.
Ever?
Never, no. They're for old people.
Okay, well, I'm not old, I'm mature, and I have worn cardigans once or twice in my life. I remember
they're nice, actually, yeah.
my mother put a cardigan on me when I was about 3 years of age. I remember she, it had the buttons down the front.
Oh, yeah.
Did you never have one of those?
No, never had one of those.
You've got
As I said, they're for old people.
You've got a better memory than me. I was only spoofing. But
You haven't got a bad memory since you can remember the cardigan she gave you when you were 3.
Yeah, but I was only made that up. This was like a table topic where you don't have to speak the truth.
Are we ready to go, lads? Because I have to go.
We're ready to go. For some reason or other, the audio synchronization is miles off today, so I've done the best I can.
Okay.
It'll be a little bit off, but tough. Right, where are we now? Audacity. Let's see if we can get Audacity up on the screen. So, let's see now. I've got everything up the creek.
Guys, let's set ourselves a challenge. Yep. Let's say that this is going to be the fastest ever recording of 4 episodes of the Talk Show for Talkers.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
The fastest ever.
Well, we've had the odd one where we've done it in sort of an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So it can happen.
We're 35 minutes late now already.
Well, yeah. Some people weren't here on time.
But thanks be to God we weren't, because if we were, we'd be flipping 45 minutes late.
Well, I was here at 2:45, 2:45.
Excuse me, guys. This is the Tour de France, and the winner will be somebody. This is a time trial, right? I set us a challenge to get this entire podcast recorded in 1 hour from now, right?
We should even do it in less, actually.
Okay, let's go for 55 minutes then, Ted.
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm going to set the timer.
Time now is...
It requires self-discipline.
Okay, Moira, let's go. So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm ready. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends.
Sorry, Ted. Hold on, Ted. I've missed on the usual thing and didn't have the right microphone. Right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, start again, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends. You're very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers on irishtalkers.com. Our email address is info@irishtalkers.com. You can also find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. We look forward to your YouTube episodes where you're going to be watching us. You're going to be watching us on various platforms. We would love to have your evaluations, your comments. We won't say critiques. Whatever you feel that you might be able to enhance this show with, we would be delighted with your feedback. You can also listen to previous shows on our website, irishtalkers.com. We also publish the Public Speaking Weekly, and this is a roundup of links from Toastmasters, public speaking, confidence, leadership. It's a treasure trove of Pandora box stuff if you like Toastmasters. And since you're listening to this, you obviously like Toastmasters. My name is Ted Malamphy, and I'm joined again this week by the superlative Paul O'Mahony.
Listeners and viewers, it's a privilege to have you on the same journey as we're on today. Good luck.
Thank you, Paul. And the mercurial Moira O'Brien.
Mercurial. Now, mercury is a very interesting substance. I can remember when I was at school, I stole some mercury from the chemistry lab, and I kept.
I hope you didn't put it in your pocket.
Oh, I did. Yeah,
Did you?
I would have got, if I'd known how horrible mercury poisoning can be, I wouldn't have touched it for the life of me. But I used to have it in my hand and, floating around and seeing what it did and seeing it oxidize on the surface. It was very interesting.
Oh, you silver fox.
Ah, well, the innocence of youth, Ted. The innocence of youth.
Yes, the innocence of youth. I used to experiment quite a lot. There was one of my friends, he was 2 years older than me, but he was really into chemicals.
Yeah.
And he used to make these chemical gardens by mixing various chemicals with water, put them in a bottle, turn it upside down. And the next day you came back to it, you had this magnificent chemical garden inside in a bottle.
Yeah.
Another time we made a bomb, we could have all have been blown up had I known it. I was 8, he was 10. We had some fantastic times. He became a scientist after dealing with chemicals. Very, very interesting, interesting man.
Yeah.
So listeners and Toastmasters and would-be Toastmasters, we are in a very particular time of our lives as Toastmasters, for the simple reason that since we've been inflicted with this pandemic, we have started to literally Zoom around the world. I have met more people in different countries, and I've been to more countries because of this opportunity that we've been presented with. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. Consequently, I think there's a huge opportunity for Toastmasters and Toastmaster clubs to increase their membership. Because I was at a meeting the other night and there were 3 people at the meeting. Well, there were more than 3, but 3 particular people at the meeting said that they were given the invitation to come to the particular meeting that I was at, which was a Toastmasters meeting. And they said they were so enchanted with it, they wanted to join the club straight away. The club actually is kind of a hybrid club, even though it didn't start out like that. It did start out with people online, all right. But now that we have Zoom, the opportunities for us are wonderful. And to hear people speaking from America and from Africa and from India, and we all speaking the one language, we really are being given a huge opportunity, in my opinion, for world peace. And we can do that through Zoom and through Toastmasters. Great opportunity. If we can all sit down and talk, different colors, different religions, different creeds, anybody and everybody, and having a good time, and we all sharing whatever we're drinking, literally, whether it's tea or milk or cocoa or something a little bit stronger. It's absolutely, the opportunities are ginormous. So what would you think, Paul?
Well, I was just putting on my grammarian's hat and thinking ginormous as against ginormous, but there's clearly a Cork pronunciation of the word, but I couldn't agree more with you, Ted. And the fact that somebody joined the club during the meeting, that's the litmus test. If you're thinking about, could we possibly ever increase the membership of Toastmasters for our clubs, say here in Cork? Could it be done online? There's proof positive that it can be.
Definitely.
So I think we could devote the entire podcast episode to celebrating the success of Knocknaheeny Club. And I actually go even further. I'd like us to bring the existing president of Knocknaheeny Club onto the Talk Show for Talkers as soon as possible.
Okay.
To tell the whole world how something that we all want to do has been done by Knocknaheeny.
Yes. And the interesting thing about Knocknaheeny, they've been in, this is their third year. So the new president is the third president. They're only about to charter. So I think it is incredible what they have achieved. And 2 of the 3 Toastmaster visitors the other evening, 2 of them are DTMs.
What does DTM stand for?
Disabled teaching mode, I think.
Right, I thought you were talking about distinguished people. Sorry about that, Ted.
That made me cringe.
Oh,
yes. We're cringing.
But I think that Crystal Long, who was president in the club in the lead up to last night's meeting in Knocknaheeny, not only did she win Toastmaster of the Year in our division, she was by universal acclaim the right person to
most definitely
get it. She's a young woman who is a terrific representative of the best that can be gained from Toastmasters. And
yes.
Now I'm not here to give a speech on why I think she deserved the award, but I know that there wasn't a person in the room at our division contest meeting who were not applauding her. And this is another example which hadn't happened. And you know what? That's the best example you could give to other clubs around the whole of, Ireland and Britain. Now, maybe there are 100 other clubs that have recruited members, but we can be proud that here in Cork, clubs can recruit members.
Oh, most definitely. And the thing about Crystal Long, as you mentioned her so eloquently, Paul, not alone was she the past president of the club and the first president as well. She had 2 terms as president. She was the founder of the club. She also founded the club.
As I say, I'd like you to interview her, Ted. We do interviews with guests from time to time.
We do, yeah.
Sometimes you interview people who are, past or present international presidents of Toastmasters. But other times you interview people who've just joined, people who haven't even made their icebreaker speech. Here's an opportunity to interview the Toastmaster of the Year in Division A and to get under, who is this person? And you have all the questions anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we did interview her, Paul, 4 years ago on the Talk Show for Talkers.
Well, I certainly think a follow-up to check.
I agree.
She may have said things 4 years ago that she's failed to deliver. I'm keen to find out as much as I can about whether people keep their promises or change their promises. So I definitely think the transcription of that interview that you did with her, that would be handy for you to have as notes while you're.
Yeah, so we can look back on those and get that.
Yeah, we can. Moira, I'm sure, has transcriptions of every single one of those interviews. Now, we will not distract her because we need to move on to the next episode of the Talk Show.
We need to start this episode because I think I've been waiting here for the quote of the week.
Well, yeah, we didn't give the quote of the day yet, or in fact, we didn't give the word of the day. But the quote of the day is: "Choice, not chance, determines destiny."
And who said that?
I don't know who he is.
Montaigne.
Montigny.
Montaigne. Montaigne.
What is it?
Montaigne.
Montaigne. Lovely. That's a lovely pronunciation and your best French. Who is he, Moira?
No idea. Never
I
heard
thought
of
it
it.
was a beautiful quote because it's so true that all of us have choices. You have a choice the very minute you open your eyes in the morning as to whether you'll hop out of the bed or go back under the duvet. All of us have choices, and the choices you make today will determine who you are tomorrow.
He's a late 18th century, early 19th century. I can't remember his exact dates. He's French, and he is a person who, if you were to, you know how there are these people in history who have got a whole load of quotable quotes?
Right,
like
yeah.
Mark
He was a
Twain.
philosopher, so.
Mark Twain, he was a count in France, and he has, there's a word called aphorisms, which are short, pithy sentences.
Lovely.
And I think, Ted, if we looked at that statement again, because I had time to well, once I saw his name, I knew him because
well done. Yeah.
I read
Choice, not chance, determines destiny.
I think that's incredibly true for him at that time. However, our destiny has been influenced by chance. Our entire world has been turned upside down by chance. We're living.
I disagree, Paul. I disagree. You're misinterpreting.
Well, thanks for interrupting me, and thanks for stopping me.
I'm sorry.
I am cringing here because the conversation is once more getting out of hand. I'm going to hand over to Paul for his word of the week.
Yes, my word of the week is cringe. There are people who have cringed, perhaps, but the key thing is, what on earth does the word cringe mean? Well, let me tell you something, that the word cringe entered the English language as far back as the 13th century. I don't know if any of you can remember the 13th century. Some of you are lifetime members of Toastmasters. Maybe you remember the 13th century. But it's to recoil from something in distaste. That's one of the meanings. I cringed as I entered the room, meaning I took a look at who was in there, and I went backwards because I didn't want to go forwards. To shrink away in fear, to behave in an excessively humble way. Now imagine somebody who when asked a question about themselves, puts themselves down. So you could say, person cringed in the face of my question. They shrunk away. C-R-I-N-G-E. One fascinating thing I learned while checking out, what other words, what could you use this word cringe instead of? You could use wince. So she winced, she cringed, she shrunk. All of those, that would be a nice triple. But there's a word I never heard of before. It is blench, B-L-E-N-C-H. It's a synonym. Blench means to draw back or turn aside because you've got lack of courage. B-L-E-N-C-H. For all you Scrabble lovers, there's a new word. It also came into the English language in the 13th century. So I'd like to hand back now to Moira O'Brien to pull this episode of the Talk Show for Talkers together.
Well,
Over to you, Moira.
I'm going to give it another extension of that word cringe, and that is cringe-worthy. And I'm going to hope that our listeners do not decide that this episode of the Talk Show for Talkers was cringe-worthy. So that's not a decent transition into the next segment of this show, but it's going to have to do.
Moira, let me offer you the antonym of cringe-worthy. It is noteworthy.
That's excellent. I approve of that. I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing. Let us invite you to rejoin us tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow morning, whatever time it is in your time zone, for a very interesting piece. It is entitled 7 Zoom Meeting Tips That Every User Should Know. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Well done, lads. That was good. I just wanted you to cringe there, Paul, when I threw the cringe in between the spokes of your bike.
Could we add an extra feature to the Talk Show for Talkers in future, at least while we're doing it on Zoom?
A feature in future. That's alliteration,
Applause
isn't
is
it?
appropriate, because whenever anybody goes to a Toastmasters meeting, no matter what they say, really, they deserve applause.
Mm.
True.
And they get it.
True.
Yeah.
True enough.
And this is countercultural in Ireland. You go to other meetings in other organizations, you say something, and you don't get any applause except for your own supporters.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
we're moving on. We're on a mission.
Okay, you don't want me to do any of the
yes.
background tasks. That's fair enough. We won't do any background. We can leave those background tasks to later. And I haven't got that my Audacity page up to show on UBTubi. So we'll just push straight ahead into the introduction to section 2. Ted, it's all yours. Did you read my note, Ted, about your introduction for this?
Certainly.
Good. Okay.
Certainly.
3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome to today's segment of the Talk Show for Talkers, and this is where we're going to introduce you to what Moira said at the conclusion of our podcast yesterday. We have a gentleman who's going to give us 7 tips on how to enhance your Zoom experience. And what I would recommend is that if you turn on your computer, your phone, your laptop, wherever you do your Zooming, and while you're listening to this, you can pause it and go back and test it so that you're learning while you're doing. Because I think the 7 tips in this are excellent, particularly for those of us who are now using Zoom. Maybe some other week we'll do some tips on the other platforms that where some of our Toastmaster colleagues around the world are using. But this week we're going to give you this particular one. And it's 7 Zoom meeting tips every user should know. So enjoy this.
Okay, now we got a copyright claim against us last week, so I'm not going to play this live on the recording, if you don't mind. You'll have to tune in to Saturday's show to listen to it online, because we don't want to get any more copyright claims. Not that it makes a huge amount of difference, but it means that the YouTube put, I was going to say videos, they put, they put adverts on it, and we don't get don't get any benefit from those adverts. So
right.
If we got benefit from it, then it would be significant. But I don't want people to have adverts.
Just a small point that I'm not 100% sure of. If the playing or the replaying, in this case, on YouTube of a particular piece of video is for educational purposes, is it possible that YouTube will say okay?
No, it's just down to the advertiser. The advertiser makes a claim. You can't, you can claim fair use. So you won't get a copyright strike, which is would be quite serious. You just get a copyright claim, and any advert revenue goes to the copyright owner, which is fair enough. You can't really complain about that.
That's fair enough, yeah. And did the Talk Show for Talkers get one of those claims?
We did.
All right, okay. Yeah. Well, that's something we have to be careful about, all right?
Yeah,
we don't want to be standing on anybody's toes, but what we're doing is promoting YouTube also, I would think, and we're consequently we're promoting the advertisers then too.
Well, we're promoting that person, that the owner of that piece, but I just rather avoid that.
Yeah.
Really
That's
good, though. It's really good to think that the owner of that piece was listening to the Talk Show for Talkers.
No, it was a bot that was listening.
Listening to Okay, I'm ready for the next segment.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do a closing for this segment first of all. So let me just get the right tool. I hope you found that section very useful for your future Zooming, especially for your meetings, because there's a lot of things in there that can be very useful for club meetings. And with that, we'll bring this segment to a close, and we'll invite you to come back tomorrow at the same time when Paul will be bringing into a subject, well, he entitles it, Don't Cringe, word of the week. Simply have several icebreakers in your knapsack. So I look forward to seeing you at 4 p.m. Irish time tomorrow. Bye for now.
Ted, a question, and I don't. This might be relevant to the future, but is those 7 tips. How difficult would it have been to just list, the tips in the chat here?
Oh, it wouldn't have been difficult at all. He talks about the ribbon that goes across the top, how to move it out of the way so that your laptop isn't flooded with stuff.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested because as a frequent user of Zoom, I'm interested in just the tips. I don't want to read paragraphs about them. It may turn out that 5 of them I know already.
Well, you know them all right, but you wouldn't know. There's a lot of stuff there that we don't know, but there's up there in front of us if you look for us.
Let me tell you, Paul, I listened to it. I listened to it this morning, and I picked up 2, if not 3 or 4 things which I didn't know before.
Yeah, there's some very good stuff there, Paul.
If you picked up 3 or 4, Moira, I probably pick up 23.
Yeah.
So, well, there's only 7.
Things I did.
Only 7 there.
Yeah.
7 tips.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very good. It's very good, Paul, and it's easy to understand and easy to follow. And the thing is that if you were to listen to it anyhow, Moira, today, you really need to look at it. You really need to look at it on YouTube to appreciate because you can see as well as hear. Whereas when you're listening to something like that, and he's explaining what he's doing from a visual point of view, it's difficult to follow it then. But when you see him doing it, it's quite simple. He walks it through.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm saying.
It's superb. It's superb.
Yeah, it was good. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, can we do the outro?
I've just done it.
Okay.
So we're ready. We're ready to go.
We're calling you in, Paul.
We're ready to go.
You want me, Mara?
No, I'll do it if you don't mind.
Okay.
Welcome, Toastmasters, Whippy Toastmasters, listeners and friends, to part 3 of this week's Talk Show for Talkers here on irishtalkers.com. I'd like to invite you to look at our website, irishtalkers.com, where you'll find some interesting information about these podcasts, but also you'll find links to previous shows, this show, and of course to our newspaper, which has links from from the world of the internet, all about public speaking and Toastmasters and confidence and leadership and everything that goes towards being able to be a confident person speaking in public. It's time now to hand the metaphorical and even physical baton, because I have a baton here, or a gavel, just to show YouTube here, to Mr. Paul O'Mahony. And Paul is going to delve in uncringeworthy into, that didn't come off very well, did it? Without cringing, he's going to talk about having several icebreakers in your knapsack. Over to you, Paul.
Listeners, you have a knapsack on your back. You have it on from the moment you get up in the morning. Some people even say you have it in your dreams. This knapsack contains some vital things that you use during every day. You use some of them every time you open your mouth. The knapsack are words and phrases. These are the gems that are inside. You meet people on the street and somehow you get into a conversation with them. You're opening your knapsack, speaking in a particular style, but also you may be saying something about yourself. So in the knapsack are all the stories about yourself that you have told in the past, and a whole lot of ingredients which you can use to tell new stories in the future. You are a natural storyteller. You can't help but be a storyteller. You have a knapsack on your back. When you join Toastmasters, you join an organization where people are going to help you to take things out of your knapsack and use them well so that they hold people's attention. When you join Toastmasters, you're going to join maybe a room full of people you've never met before, or you may only know one or two faces. And you gradually learn after you've joined that, look, in your own time, when you're ready, you're going to make what's called an icebreaker speech. Now, you're not handed an ice pick. You're not asked to break anything. You're asked to quite simply say something to us all so that we'll know a bit more about you when you've finished. You're invited to do something you may have done 1,000 times before, or something you may never have done because you've avoided it all your life. You're invited to come up to the front of the room. You have permission to read out a script you've written before, to speak off the top of your head. You can, if you want to, sing a song. You can introduce yourself to people any way you like. One of the co-presenters here on this show, Ted Melanphy, is a member of a business networking group. And every Friday, he goes along to a meeting early in the morning. And every single Friday, he introduces himself to people who are in the room. Every Friday, his icebreaker is different. Why? Because some Fridays he's sleepy, because some Fridays he's got loads of energy, because some Fridays he spilt a glass of water down the front of his shirt just before he's due to speak. Sometimes he decides, well, what I said last week didn't make me rich, and because I'm here in this business networking group, trying to get more and more business, I'm going to try something else in order to get rich. Ted has aspirations to own a transatlantic yacht. That's why he wants to earn a lot of money. He is used to doing an icebreaker speech every week. Now, when you join Toastmasters, you think, well, there's only one icebreaker I can make, and it's the story of my whole life. And somebody then whispers in your ear and says, just tell us about yesterday, or tell us a tiny bit about your life. We're only going to let you speak for 5 minutes, give or take a minute. That's all. You know, you'll send us to sleep if you tell us everything on the first day, or else you'll be so good that we won't want to hear anyone else at the meeting. So we're only giving you a time limit. So why on earth do Toastmasters, not only when they start in Toastmasters, give an icebreaker speech? Well, they do it because they have to introduce themselves to people in the room, to both the members of their own club who are going to be their future team of supporters who are going to help them to achieve their goals. And you do actually need to say hi to people. There might be people in the room who've never met you before. They'll be wondering, who on earth is this guy? Here's this woman. She seems to have been an accountant in her previous life, but is she still able to do addition? Or is, whatever. So you need to practice this skill of introducing yourself, because you do it all the time without thinking about it. But you know in your heart of hearts, you could be more interesting. You could hold people's attention a bit better. That's why you've joined Toastmasters, because you want people to listen to you and pay attention to you. You want to be better at being helpful to other people. So you don't help people if you bore the pants off them. So basically, you're here for a purpose. You sometimes have been in a club for a long time. People forget. stuff about you that is really important. People, you might have mentioned to people in the bar after the meeting or wherever after the meeting that, you know, last year my first grandchild was born. Then you do another icebreaker. Because only some of the members know that you're once again a grandfather or maybe grandmother for the first time, you tell people. People like knowing who they're in the room with. They're curious. You need to reintroduce yourself. For example, supposing you've done all the introductions on the old education program, first one, but now you're going to start on the new super duper wonderful education program in Toastmasters called Pathways. Why did you pick that you want to be a visionary communicator? Why? People are wondering. I thought you'd do the coaching one. Why on earth? But they're not going to tell you that. But they're going to be very interested if you tell them. The reason I'm doing visionary communications is I'm not good enough yet. And I'm only really good about talking to what happened to me yesterday. I'm no good about talking about what you have to do in order to get to heaven. I mean, that's a big thing. And I'm not used to doing that. So I want to be a visionary communicator. And that's what you would be if you were telling people how you get to heaven. I mean, you'd be saying, hey, this is a big vision. And lots of politicians. I mean, people come to Toastmasters because they want to run for electoral office. When they run for electoral office, they need to introduce themselves. What are they going to say that will get people to feel like voting for them? So the key thing is you need to have many, many different icebreakers or bits and pieces you can use for your icebreaker in your knapsack. It's a little bit like having a CV. If you use the same CV for every single job you apply for, what are your chances? What are your chances? Do you think somebody isn't going to realize that your CV is a stock CV if you say nothing at all about what kind of skills they're looking for? You're up against competition if you're applying for a job. You're up against competition if you want other people's attention. So you need to use all these things you have already in order to speak in an interesting way about yourself. As many different icebreakers as you can do. Next week, introduce yourself to 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a different way and see what that feels like. And then come back to your club and make a speech about your experience of doing half a dozen different icebreakers. Madam Toastmaster.
Yes, lots of applause there, Paul. Well done. I have to say that I've done a couple of icebreakers, but I didn't actually change them particularly because I was introducing myself to different clubs. I'm trying to think back. Have I done more than one icebreaker to the same club? And the answer has to be yes, but and again, I don't think I changed it dramatically. But you've given me pause for thought. And yeah, I'm now going to sit down and I'm going to write myself a couple of new ones, just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Ted.
And you piqued my interest too, Paul, when you mentioned those of us who go to networking meetings on a regular basis. It's very important for me in the business that I'm in, or indeed for any business, that when you do get up to give that elevator speech, you call it an icebreaker, we call it an elevator speech. It's 60 seconds. And you have to be able to tell a lot about yourself in 60 seconds. And you'd be amazed at how difficult some people find it. Now, I'm lucky, I suppose, the fact that I'm in Toastmasters has helped enormously. But also, the business that I'm in, I can tell a different story every week and make it interesting for people, particularly with things that would have happened in the previous week. And God only knows the business that I'm in now. Everybody knows now what PPE is.
Yes.
There was a time when I used to have to explain to people what PPE is. And there was a time when I used to cringe when I was telling people of the business that I was in. because the business I'm in would not be regarded as sexy.
Yes.
But no, I'm proud to be able to tell people of the business I'm in, because I'm at the coal face at the moment. So that
Yeah.
my esteem has been elevated because of the business I'm in.
Indeed.
And one thing that I would like to add, and this is something that people could do in an icebreaker also, but in the elevator pitch, it's important that you have a memory hook. And a memory hook is a little sentence whereby people will remember who you are. My memory hook is, since I'm a health and safety consultant, is safety is no accident.
Accident. And that's a
And
really
I've had
good one.
people come up to me and say, I can't remember your name, but I met you 5 years ago at a networking meeting and you said safety is no accident. Yeah. Can't remember my name, but they can remember the memory hook. That's why it's called a memory hook.
And it's interesting, Ted, that when you tune into tomorrow's episode, when I'm going to be talking about, well, I won't tell you what I'm going to be talking about. I'm just going to give you the title that I've given it, which is Don't Get Ready, Stay Ready. And one of the things that's going to come up there is we'll talk about these foundational phrases, of which what you just heard from Ted is one. Come back again tomorrow, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Bye for now. Okay, how are we doing on the? How are we doing on the? On the hour?
That was a lovely. That was
good. Well done. Yeah.
About the icebreaker. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. And we managed to run over time again. Of course, we always do.
Ted, I've come across a few people, and that means there are a lot of them out there who have said, why should I do another icebreaker at the start of this path? I've done my icebreaker.
Yeah.
And they kind of say to themselves, maybe,
very good point.
Icebreakers are just for novices.
Yeah. And so we get people say, well, I've done my icebreaker in the CC. I'm doing another icebreaker in my path. And I'm going on to another path now. And I've got to do another icebreaker. It's ridiculous. Yeah, and they don't realize the progression.
The point about that actually is that when you hear the word icebreaker, you think about the Titanic. And the Titanic only had one icebreaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it went down. But that, I think that's what it's connected to. We should be rephrasing it. Well, not rephrasing it, but giving a new definition for it. An icebreaker is an opportunity for people to give a different presentation of themselves.
But Ted, you've just given a great example. The ice breaker, the ice is only 1/8 above the water and 7/8 below the water. Yeah. So if you're breaking that iceberg, then you have all these other 7 bits that you can give information about.
Exactly, yeah.
Why didn't we include that in the show?
You know, I like gin and tonic.
Really?
You do, yeah.
So you have your own ice pick.
You also know I like pure gin, right? So when I make gin and tonic or pure gin, I take ice out of the freezer. Yeah. Almost always, I need to do an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Because the lump of ice is too big to go in the glass.
Right. You want to get a bigger glass.
And the other thing, Ted, is that the reason that people are grumpy about doing a second or third icebreaker is because they haven't listened to this episode of the Talk Show for Talkers.
Of course.
They wouldn't ever be grumpy again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Okay, come on. Well, how are we doing on the 1 hour?
Let's go, lads. We're nearly there.
How are we doing, Paul?
To our time limit.
You've been timing us.
Moira, it's perfect, provided you keep to, because I've set the, thank you for reminding me, I've set the alarm on 10 minutes before the hour is up.
Okay.
The alarm is set for 16.
And the hour is up in 14 minutes.
Okay, so Paul, you going to bring us in this time?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, I will happily, yeah.
Okay, nearly there.
What are you going to talk about? Sorry.
Be ready, stay ready.
They don't get ready, stay ready is the title. But if you want to know what I'm going to talk about, it's actually very connected, very much connected with your subject. It's about having a a knapsack. I wasn't going to use that word, of stories.
Use a golf bag. Moira, you can use a golf bag.
Okay, a golf bag. I'll write that down right now so I don't make it.
Paul, Robert Stevens was back in his club yesterday, Kinsale.
Was he?
Yeah, 35 points he had. He turned in 21.
Yeah. Paul, you've suddenly gone quiet.
Well, I'm waiting for...
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm going to be talking about basically is having a fund of stories that you can regurgitate, but not just, well, I won't go into more detail because there's a lot of detail to go into. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Listeners, as you know, life is one big, long race. And on this race, you need to always be ready for the signal. And now I'm going to give you the signal. Let me introduce Moira O'Brien, who's going to give us ready, steady, go, Moira.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Paul. And ready, steady, go it is. As you probably know, if you've been following these podcasts for the last however long, you'll know that I'm a very keen fan of Craig Valentine, the 1999 world champion of public speaking. And one of his pet phrases, and I can tell you he has an awful lot of them, is don't get ready, stay ready. And what does he mean by that? He means that you don't just prepare for the speech that you're going to give next week or in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. You have a fund of speeches or at least stories in your back pocket that you can regurgitate at any given moment of time. And in one of my on-site clubs this last week, we had a superb example of this when one of our members was asked to give, we didn't have a speaker, by the way, so one of our members offered to give a speech, and he gave a superb speech without any preparation or warning. He just said, well, I'll tell you a story. And he told a fabulous story. So that's what I want to talk about today. We all have many stories that we like to tell. I know I do. I have maybe a fund of 5 or 6 different stories of things that have happened during my life. But I've never really sat down and crafted those stories to become more interesting. So what I've started doing is I have a notebook. I have it here and I've written down, I've got 4 that I'm going to work on now, 4 speech titles. And they're things that either things that have happened in my life or are related to me. One of the stories is actually about one of my ancestors. But it doesn't matter what it is. The key thing is that you have these stories that you have taken the time to write down and craft, and then be able to bring these stories out and weave them into your table topics and into your speeches. Okay, now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, I don't want to give the same story more than once to my Toastmasters group. Wrong. You want to give that story not just once, not just twice, 3 or 4 times, because after each repetition of that story, you're going to get feedback from your audience. You're going to get laughs in places that maybe you didn't expect to. You're not going to get laughs in other places where you thought you would get laughs. And that gives you the opportunity to go back and rewrite your story. Change the order of things. Bring characters in, take characters out. Cut. Take out anything unnecessary. How many times should you do this? Well, you should do this as many times as it is necessary in order to get that story as slick and as good as you can. So rewrite it, hone it down. What works? What laughs? Is it about me? Is it about the audience? Is there a message in there? If there isn't a message, what message can I get in? Can I get a foundational phrase like what we had at the beginning? Don't get ready, stay ready. Do we have any phrases that we can put in? I'm going to list you a couple that came out from a recent conference call. The phrase determines the stage. How about that? That's a lovely one. No change, no story. Most people don't want to be most people. I love that one. It's one that makes you think. Tease them before you tell them. There's so many things you can get down. You can get these 6-word phrases that you can bring in, which are memorable. And Ted gave us his really memorable one, which was, Ted, come on, unmute yourself. No, you're muted.
Safety is no accident.
That's right. Safety is no accident. And
Sorry, what did you say, Ted? What did you say, Ted?
Safety is no accident.
And I know a president of the United States who would say it even once more.
Safety is no accident.
But for the benefit of our American listeners, of whom there are a substantial number, we are apolitical in this show. Now, where was I? Yeah, a message. Why am I saying a message? Well, a story can be amusing. It can be, I suppose, educational. But if it doesn't have a message, if it doesn't have something that the audience can relate to as being themselves, about themselves, then it's not going to have the impact that it might otherwise have. So try to build something into your story, something that the audience can take away and remember. And this comes back to this foundational phrase. Now, it's not easy. You have to work at it. But for each of your stories, try and find something that is a hook that is... Well, let's think of the stories that I have here, which I haven't... This is something which I've only come to fairly recently myself. So, you know, I'm only a few steps ahead of you. But, Paul, stop laughing. No, this is true, folks. I am currently on a little course with Craig Valentine, which is why he's very much in my thoughts at the moment. And in fact, I'm going into a conference call with him in a few minutes' time. And this is what it's all bringing this around to the forefront of my ideas. I have one of my stories, and this is the top one of my list. It relates to the last time that I was gainfully employed by somebody else. This was 30 odd years ago. And the phrase that I have here, I don't know if it's a good one or not, but it's a question that I'm going to ask. And that is, have you ever had a boss? Okay, it's not very good. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to rephrase it. Because there is another phrase that comes out of this story, and that is, I don't like chartered accountants. Now, that might work with an audience of chartered accountants, but it might not, or any accountants, I suppose, but it might not work in general audiences. So I've got to go back and rethink that story and try to pick out of it something which will apply to a general audience, because it's not about me, it's about you.
Moira,
yes.
How about chartered accountants are not attractive?
Yeah, that's not a bad one. But it's the best phrases are phrases that you can turn around to yourself and say, yeah, I can relate that to myself. Do you find that? And do you follow the reasoning there?
Can I interject here, Moira?
Please do.
My phrase for accountants would be 5 out of 4 accountants can't count.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. But you see, that wouldn't be related to this particular story. The story that I tell is how I was my company was taken over by an American company, and my boss, whom I got on with very well, we had a great relationship with, he was made redundant, and a new finance director was brought in to replace him. And the first thing that this man said to me when I was introduced to him was, "I don't like chartered accountants." And obviously that phrase coloured our relationship, which was a very brief one because I left the company about a year later. I'm surprised I lasted for a year. Well, folks, that's that.
Moira, I just
Yes.
have to ask the question all the listeners want to know.
Yes.
Were you fired by him?
I was made redundant.
So he didn't like chartered accountants and he fired you.
Yeah, I have to say that I was made redundant along with the whole of the original main board, with the majority of the divisional directors, of which I was one. So yeah, I was in good company.
And was he a finance man himself, Moira?
He was a certified accountant.
Ah, there's the problem.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's chip on your shoulder time.
Certified. We'll discuss that on our finance podcast, which listeners will be available sometime in the next 12 months, because we have in Blarney Club 2 retired accountants, and undoubtedly they'd like to set up their own podcast, because they're doing pathways and on pathways. You set up your own podcast. And I'm quite sure that we can find a mentor who is also either a chartered or a certified accountant. In fact, we probably could find a management accountant as well.
Yeah, you have 2 or 3 of them in Blarney Toastmasters.
That's right.
Frank is one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mary Martin is another, I think.
Is she? Really?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the Blarney Accountants podcast. We'll find a better name, won't we, Ted?
And we have Neil O'Brien, who's not a retired accountant. He's
Yeah, he's a business consultant now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a business consultant. No, but what did he say he was again? Not a retired accountant.
He's an author and he writes books. And
he does. Listen, folks, we'll take this conversation offline. It's not very interesting for our listeners. I'll now bring...
Moira has unrivaled insight into our listeners and has on the phone got a direct link to all of our listeners. And so what she said was actually factual, not a rubbishy opinion, not a completely misleading statement.
Listeners, there is this
wonderful... next week, and we'll have a nice guest next week.
There's this wonderful thing I will show you now on screen, that I'm going to take all this bit at the end here, which you can see on screen, and I'm going to delete it. And I'm now going to give the outro to the show. So bear with me whilst I undo what I've just done. And so that brings us to the end of another week of Talk Show for Talkers episodes on irishtalkers.com. Do join us again in the coming week and in the coming weeks, when we'll have more interesting and useful podcasts for you to become the better version of yourself in public speaking. See you then. Bye for now.
Bye. See you next week.
Thank you very much for listening.
There we go, folks.
Best of luck Saturday, Paul. Or is it Friday? Saturday, no?
Friday and Saturday.
Oh, yeah. You're giving the elevator speech on Friday.
Well, no, Friday is a grilling, Ted. It's a public grilling in which you're on a stage in front of nobody knows how many people.
You're tied to the stock.
You're actually asked some of the most demanding questions that they dare ask you.
Right.
And you do it live on YouTube, probably, or on Zoom.
It'll be live, I can tell you.
I love blood sports.
It will be recorded on YouTube on Friday evening. and it will be made available at the end of the showcase. So it will not be live. You won't be able to view it whilst it's happening. But as soon as it's finished, then you'll be able to go and play it.
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
that's the first thing. I have half a dozen evaluators lined up to evaluate my interview in order to help me with the 2-minute speech the following day.
Now, the following day on Saturday, it will be streamed live.
Oh yeah, so you're going to be doing the speech, your pitch on Friday, and that's going to does it have a bearing then on the election on the Saturday? It does, obviously.
Look.
Yes, of course.
The thing that has most bearing on the election is who's paid the voters the biggest amount of money prior to the election.
Paul, an interesting question. I have an interesting question for you. I was thinking about this earlier on. Philip O'Brien is the outgoing division director.
He is.
He's also the outgoing president of Bandon.
Mm-hmm.
He is, yes.
He's also the present president of Knocknaheeny.
Yes, he's a fantastic Toastmaster.
And he also has as division director, he has a vote. He also has a vote as president. He actually has 4 votes.
No, he doesn't have
3 votes.
Vote in relation to his future role in Knocknaheeny. He's not yet president in Knocknaheeny. You don't become president until...
Oh, yeah.
July.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right.
I was thinking, he has 2 votes anyhow, hasn't he?
However, I think it's possible that you only get 1 vote according to the new rules, especially for this.
I don't think so.
No. You get a vote for each.
The area director has a vote.
If you
and if you're an officer of a club, you also have that vote.
Yeah. If, for example, you were president and VPE, which does happen occasionally.
Yeah, it does.
And an area director.
You would have 3 votes.
You would have 3 votes.
I think it's a bit too late for me to try to get a president to resign, take over the duties for the last few weeks of this year, and also get the VPE to resign.
No, I wouldn't have been suggesting that, but the thought that was going through my head, since you have the division director being the proposer of one of the people who's going for the role that you're going for, that's potentially 3 votes there.
Yeah.
And possibly, could there be a casting vote if it was a draw?
Could be.
Somebody, I think it's probably likely that the district director will have a casting vote in the event of there being a tie.
What is the district director?
See, most of the voters, the vast majority of voters
will be at the conference, yeah.
No, but they don't belong to district division. They people in Aberdeen can influence who wins the Division A election.
You're right, actually.
Absolutely, yes.
And, it's even hypothetically possible. Supposing I had been a dreadful area director and everyone in the area detested me. It's possible that I could be elected to be the division director by a whole load of people who have no idea how upset. There could be clubs about to leave the division if I became the director, and nobody would know.
Yeah, but that's why you were sending out your profile during the week, wasn't it?
Well, it's a beauty contest, basically.
Yeah.
But the profile, I wouldn't put in my profile, would I? Or would anyone put in the profile? During the last year...
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I think, Paul, as we are live streaming this, I think we ought to close the live stream down because you might actually be influencing your voting public.
Mario, can you cut that now, or is it gone?
No, it's gone. It's gone.
You mean it's gone out live?
It's live, yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that, Ted. But we will close the stream now. And thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the talk show for talkers.
Ted, you brought up a very